From Magnum PI to Blue Bloods and more, actor Tom Selleck has ascended to heights he never imagined. Now he's taking in the view.
After 14 seasons, 293 episodes, and countless Sunday family dinners around the Reagan table, Tom Selleck sat down for what he thought would be just another interview about the end of Blue Bloods. The questions started predictably enough. How did it feel to say goodbye? What would he miss most? Would he ever consider a reunion? Tom gave his usual gracious answers, the ones he'd been rehearsing for months. But then the interviewer asked something different. They asked him to tell the real story, the one behind the corporate press releases and carefully worded statements. And something in Tom shifted. At 80 years old, with nothing left to lose and everything to set straight, he finally told the truth. What he revealed wasn't just shocking. It was a betrayal that went deeper than anyone imagined, involving broken promises, corporate greed, and a level of disrespect that left even his closest co-stars stunned. This is what really happened to Blue Bloods, and why Tom Selleck's final role ended the way it did. To understand the magnitude of what Blue Bloods meant to Tom, you have to go back to where he was before it started. Tom Selleck was born on January 29, 1945, in Detroit, Michigan. His path to stardom wasn't quick or easy. He spent years doing commercials, including dozens for Pepsi, trying to catch any break he could. Then, in 1980, at age 35, he landed the role that would define a generation. Magnum PI made Tom Selleck a household name. The Hawaiian shirts, the Ferrari, and that iconic mustache became symbols of 1980s television. The show ran for 8 seasons, won Tom an Emmy, and at its peak, he was earning $500,000 per episode. He was one of the biggest stars on television. But when Magnum ended in 1988, Tom discovered something that terrifies every actor. He was typecast. Hollywood saw him as Magnum, and only Magnum. His film career never reached the heights he hoped for, despite a hit with 3 men and a baby. The 1990s and 2000s were lean years filled with TV movies and small roles that paid the bills but didn't fulfill him creatively. He had a memorable arc on Friends playing Monica's older boyfriend, which was somewhat ironic given the age gap jokes. He made a series of Jesse Stone movies that critics loved but never found a massive audience. During this time, Tom was supporting a family, maintaining his beloved ranch in Ventura, California, and watching his savings from the Magnum years slowly deplete. The ranch alone cost over $500,000 a year to operate. By his early 60s, Tom Selleck thought his best days were behind him. Then in 2010, his phone rang. CBS was developing a new cop drama about a multi-generational family of New York City law enforcement officers. They wanted Tom to play the patriarch, Police Commissioner Frank Reagan. At 65, when most actors are planning retirement, Tom was being offered what would become the role of his later life. He almost didn't take it. Another cop show? He'd been there with Magnum. And the commitment was enormous. The show filmed in New York, which meant months away from his California ranch. But something about the script resonated with him. Frank Reagan wasn't just a cop. He was a father, a grandfather. A man trying to hold his family together while serving his city. It was a character with depth, morality, and complexity. Tom signed on, and Blue Bloods premiered in September 2010. The show was an immediate hit. The premiere drew 15.5 million viewers, making it CBS's strongest new drama in years. What set Blue Bloods apart was those Sunday family dinners. Every episode ended with the Reagan family gathered around the table, discussing their week, their cases, their conflicts. It was wholesome in an era when television was getting darker and more cynical. The ensemble cast, including Donnie Wahlberg as Danny Reagan, Bridget Moynihan as Erin, Will Estes as Jamie and Len Cariou as the family patriarch Henry created chemistry that felt genuinely familial. Critics were mixed, but audiences didn't care. They loved the Reagans, and they especially loved Tom as Frank, the moral center holding everything together. For 14 years, Blue Bloods was a consistent ratings winner. It routinely pulled 8 to 10 million live viewers, massive numbers in an era of declining broadcast television. It became CBS's Friday night anchor, the show that defined the network's brand for an older, more traditional demographic. Tom relocated his life, spending months in New York every year. He poured himself into Frank Reagan, making the character as iconic in its own way as Magnum had been. The show gave Tom financial stability again. He was earning $200,000 per episode, enough to maintain the ranch, support his family, and finally feel secure. More importantly, it gave him purpose. At an age when Hollywood usually discards actors, Tom Selleck was the lead of a major network drama. He thought this was how his career would end, on his own terms, playing a character he loved for as long as audiences wanted to watch. But behind the scenes, trouble was brewing long before anyone publicly acknowledged it. The first warning signs appeared around 2018 when Paramount, CBS's parent company, began a massive corporate restructuring. Budgets were being cut across all shows. Executives were pushing for cheaper programming and more content for their new streaming service, Paramount Plus. Blue Bloods, which cost nearly $4 million per episode to produce, was becoming expensive by network standards. When the pandemic hit in 2020, things got worse. Production shut down. Season 11 was shortened from 22 episodes to just 16. Safety protocols increased costs significantly. And Tom's age, 75 at the time, made him a higher insurance risk. The network started looking at Blue Bloods differently, not as a beloved hit, but as a financial liability. Here's what the public was told. Blue Bloods was ending because all good things must come to an end. The official statements talked about creative decisions and wanting to go out on top. Some reports suggested ratings were declining, though this was misleading at best. Yes, Blue Bloods wasn't pulling the 15 million viewers it once did, but nothing on broadcast television was anymore. The show was still consistently in the top 10 most watched programs on CBS. It was still profitable, still beloved, still critically respected. So why was it really ending? Tom stayed silent for months, honoring his contract and protecting the network. But now, finally, he's telling the truth. In November 2023, CBS announced that Season 14 would be Blue Bloods' last. The cast found out through media reports. Tom received no advance warning, no respectful phone call, nothing. He read about the cancellation of his show online like everyone else. Publicly, he released a gracious statement thanking fans and saying he was proud of what they'd accomplished. Privately, he was devastated and furious, because the real reason Blue Bloods ended had nothing to do with creativity or ratings. It was about money, corporate greed, and a level of disrespect that still makes Tom angry when he discusses it. What Tom reveals now is stunning. CBS didn't want to end Blue Bloods entirely. They wanted to end Tom's involvement in it. Executives approached him about doing a Blue Bloods Next Generation that would phase out Frank Reagan and focus on the younger characters. Tom would appear occasionally, maybe in a few episodes per season, while a new actor would take over as the lead. The network wanted to cut costs by replacing their highest-paid actor while keeping the profitable franchise alive. When Tom refused, when he said it was the Reagan family with him or nothing at all, they canceled the entire show. They chose to end a ratings success rather than pay him what he was worth. The financial details Tom shares are eye-opening. Over 14 seasons, Blue Bloods generated billions of dollars for CBS and Paramount. The syndication deals alone were worth hundreds of millions. International sales, streaming rights, merchandise, All of it added up to one of the most profitable shows in CBS history. And yet, when it came time to negotiate Tom's contract for potential additional seasons, the network claimed they couldn't afford him. They wanted him to take a significant pay cut, reducing his episode fee from $200,000 to around $125,000. For context, this is a show that made the network more profit per episode than almost anything else on their schedule. They weren't asking because they couldn't afford it. They were asking because they thought he had no choice but to accept. Tom did the math. At 80 years old, he wasn't getting other leading role offers. The ranch still cost $500,000 annually to maintain. He had family obligations and a lifestyle he'd worked 50 years to build. The network assumed he'd take the pay cut rather than lose everything. But Tom surprised them. He said no. He told them that if Blue Bloods wasn't worth properly compensating its lead actor after 14 successful seasons, then it wasn't worth doing anymore. He called their bluff, and they ended the show. The emotional toll of this betrayal cannot be overstated. Tom gave 14 years to Blue Bloods. He relocated his life, committed to grueling filming schedules at an age when he could have been retired, and poured his heart into Frank Reagan. He believed he had a partnership with CBS built on mutual respect and loyalty. Instead, he learned what he'd always suspected about Hollywood. Loyalty only goes one way. The stress affected his health in ways he's only now discussing publicly. His blood pressure spiked. He developed sleep problems. His wife, Jilly, was terrified he'd have a heart attack from the stress. Doctors warned him to step back, but he couldn't. He had a show to finish and a character to honor. Meanwhile, his co-stars were equally blindsided. Donnie Wahlberg was the most vocal, openly criticizing CBS's decision and fighting for the show's continuation. Bridget Moynihan posted emotional messages on social media about what Blue Bloods meant to her. Len Cariou, who at 90 had played Tom's father Henry for the entire run, was heartbroken. They were a real family, forged over 14 years of working together, and the network was tearing them apart for balance sheet reasons that had nothing to do with the quality of their work. Filming the final season was emotionally brutal. Everyone knew this was the end. Every scene carried extra weight. The Sunday dinner sequences, always the heart of the show, became almost unbearable to film. Cast and crew would frequently break down in tears between takes. Tom, as always, remained the professional. He gave some of the best performances of his entire career in season 14, pouring all his frustration and sadness into Frank Reagan's final cases. He wanted to give fans an ending worthy of their 14 years of loyalty, even if the network hadn't given him the same courtesy. Now, with the series finale aired and his contractual obligations fulfilled, Tom is free to speak completely honestly. And what he reveals is damning. He names specific executives who broke promises to him. He discusses email chains where they assured him the show would continue, only to reverse course weeks later. He talks about how they exploited the cast's love for the show, knowing they'd keep working even through the uncertainty, because they cared about the characters and each other. It was calculated manipulation disguised as business decisions. Tom also addresses the ageism that played a role in everything. At 80, he was too old to be a leading man according to network thinking. Never mind that he was still delivering powerful performances and carrying entire episodes on his shoulders. Never mind that his character's age was part of what made him compelling. The industry's obsession with youth meant that an 80-year-old actor, no matter how talented or profitable, was seen as a liability. Tom points out the bitter irony. If he'd been 50, Blue Bloods would still be filming. His age, which brought gravitas and authenticity to Frank Reagan, became the excuse to end his career. The financial impact on Tom personally is significant. Blue Bloods was his primary income. The Magnum residuals dried up years ago. He has investments and savings, but maintaining the Ventura Ranch and supporting his family requires steady income. At 80, he's not getting other leading role offers. The industry has made that clear. There's talk of a potential Jesse Stone finale movie, and he's selective about smaller roles. But nothing will replace what Blue Bloods provided both financially and creatively. His relationship with CBS is professionally cordial, but personally destroyed. Tom will fulfill any contractual obligations, but he's made clear he won't work with certain executives again. The bridges aren't just burned, they're ash. He's open to a Blue Bloods reunion movie if circumstances change, but he's realistic about the odds. The network would have to admit their mistake, and corporations rarely do that. What keeps Tom going is the knowledge that Blue Bloods created something that will outlast all the corporate nonsense. 14 seasons and 293 episodes exist forever now. The show is in syndication, streaming platforms, and living rooms around the world. Families still gather to watch the Reagans gather for Sunday dinner. The values the show represented, family, duty, honor, still resonate with millions. That can't be taken away by bad executives or corporate greed. Tom's co-stars remain close friends. They have a group chat that's active daily. They talk about meeting up, doing panels together, keeping the Blue Bloods family alive, even if the show is gone. Donnie, Bridget, Will, and Len aren't just former colleagues. They're people Tom loves and who love him back. That relationship, forged over 14 years of early mornings and late nights, matters more than any Emmy or ratings number. Looking back on his career, Tom sees the poetry in bookending it with two iconic television roles. Magnum P. I made him a star in his 30s. Blue Bloods gave him a legacy in his 70s. Few actors get one career-defining role. Tom got two, decades apart, in completely different genres. He's grateful for that even as he's angry about how the second one ended. He has no regrets about fighting back, about refusing the pay cut, about standing up for his worth. Even if it cost him the show, he maintained his dignity. At 80 years old, Tom Selleck has clarity about what matters. Career success doesn't define human worth. The love of family, the respect of peers, the knowledge that you gave everything to your craft. Those things matter more than staying on television one more season. Blue Bloods was a privilege and a gift, but it was also just a job. The real gift was the people he worked with and the audiences who welcomed Frank Reagan into their homes every week. Tom's advice to younger actors reflects this hard-won wisdom. Don't expect loyalty from corporations that view you as a line item on a budget. Protect yourself financially, because the industry will discard you the moment you're not profitable. Build a life outside your career because Hollywood will break your heart. And never ever let them define your value. You know what you're worth. Don't accept less just because they're counting on your love for the work to make you compliant. As for what's next, Tom is taking time to simply be himself. Not Frank Reagan or Magnum or anyone, but Tom Selleck. He's at his ranch, spending time with his wife and daughter, enjoying the simple pleasures he sacrificed for decades of 16-hour days on set. He's not retired, that's not financially viable, but he's selective. He'll work when the right project comes along, something that respects both his talent and his worth. There's one final revelation Tom shares, and it's the most important one. Despite everything, despite the betrayal and the corporate games and the disrespectful ending, he wouldn't change his decision to do Blue Bloods. Frank Reagan was a role worth playing. The Sunday dinners, the moral complexity, the chance to portray a good man trying to do right in a complicated world, that was meaningful work. The fact that it ended badly doesn't erase 14 years of something beautiful. Tom wants fans to remember that Blue Bloods was always bigger than CBS's bottom line. It was about family, the one on screen, and the one that formed behind the cameras. It was about telling stories that respected the audience's intelligence and values. It was about proving that in an era of anti-heroes and moral ambiguity, there was still room for a character like Frank Reagan, someone who tried every day to be better, to do right. to hold his family together against all odds. The show is over, but its legacy isn't. And neither is Tom Selleck's. At 80, having finally told the whole truth about what happened, he's at peace. He fought the good fight, stood up for his worth, and left everything on the table. Frank Reagan would be proud. And in the end, that matters more than anything CBS could ever give or take away. The Sunday dinners will live on forever, a testament to what television can be when people care more about the work than the money. Tom made sure of that, and no corporate decision can change it.